year ago. I was getting ready to get married. I just started a new job and I had a lot to look forward to. I was looking forward to it, actually. And then one day I woke up and looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. And I had the beginnings of intense body dysmorphia. So I began to actually hate myself. It was weird to know yourself, or at least think you know yourself, for almost 30 years and then be in the middle of some of the best moments of your life and then feel like you didn't know yourself at all. I had fallen into a well, and it became like an echo chamber to my thoughts, which obviously were very negative and unhealthy. Thankfully, I married the best person ever. And I was able to talk about these things with him. And so he knew what I was going through, and he was there. It was awesome. One day, I was getting ready for the day. I walked into our bathroom, and without thinking, I looked in the mirror like I would any day to just try and get ready and try and get through the morning. And I think I must have frowned at myself, because the next thing I know, my husband comes bounding into the bathroom out of nowhere. I didn't even know where he was in the apartment. And he stood in front of me and faced me and said, "Here, let me be your mirror." And then he actually didn't even say anything after that. He just grabbed me and held me. And that was actually what I needed. And what became clear is that I had reached the limits of my own ability to love myself. Basically, what I had done for years is I had sort of drawn like a line around myself and created a boundary, which actually was more like a limitation for how much I could love myself. But when Wyatt looked me in the eye and held me that day, it brought me to my senses enough to realize that that breaking point, it wasn't just any breaking point, it was those limitations I had put around myself. And in my mind, what I thought God's limitations were as well. It was like mentally, I began to believe that that line I had drawn around myself, that if I ever sort of bumped up against it, that God would stop loving me too. And when I gained all that weight and I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize myself, I'd bumped up against it, and I also felt like God didn't love me anymore, which is a lie. I also felt like people didn't love me anymore. But sometimes I was hugged, and sometimes I was told that I was beautiful. And those kinds of things were like people reaching down into the well that I had fallen into in order to help me out. And as God sort of led me through those boundaries and through those limitations, I began to see that He could lift that veil, if even for a second, for me to see that my worldview and my story, while it's mine, it's not the only worldview, it's not the only perspective. And I didn't have to hold on to those kinds of beliefs that, oh, if I weigh this much or have this dress size, that I'm gonna lose some level of love. That's not actually a limitation of love. Those things don't have to be a limitation for how I love myself or how I love others. I'm no longer in that echo chamber anymore, which is really awesome. I'm nowhere near perfect to loving myself or even other people. But thankfully, in the middle of all that noise that was in my head and all those negative thoughts and fears that I am crazy or bad just for having the body that I have, God was able to silence those in just one look and one touch from a man that he gave me about a year ago, and I'm just really grateful.